Says it's live on YouTube on my end.
It does? Okay, good. Well, that's interesting. So,
Yeah.
all right. I'm just waiting for our YouTube to go live from my end. I don't see it up yet, but excited. This is Trent Clark, the CEO of Leadershipity, and I'm here today with Arturo Gomez. Arturo, how are you, man? Arturo, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Here we go.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, great. I verified it is live.
Okay, very good.
Yes.
Excited to be here. Again, I'll open it up. I apologize. We had a couple technical difficulties this morning and this afternoon for us in the East Coast. So I am Trent Clark, CEO of Leadershipity, serial entrepreneur, international speaker, longtime coach in professional baseball. Most people know me because I spent coached in 3 different World Series, and excited to welcome you to the show. Winners find a way. Today is my guest, Arturo Gomez. Say hello, Arturo.
How you doing, Trent, and everybody out there listening? Very excited to be here today. Trent, as you know, I'm insanely passionate about, I would say fanatical about leadership.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that we share is we are both fanatical about mentorship.
That's right.
Yeah, and a
Yeah.
lot of people, we're going to talk a little bit about that today because that's just a topic that's near and dear to both Arturo and my heart. But what people really should know about Arturo, well, before I get into Arturo, hold on. If you're listening to the show and this is the first time you've ever tuned in, we talk about, have you ever, personally, have you ever faced a time, stiff adversity, felt like losses are mounting and you need to find a better way? What worked in the past hasn't worked. I think you've come to the right place. We talk to a lot of successful individuals, and guess what? Successful individuals have gone through some serious challenges, and Arturo's no different. He's going to talk about some of those things about getting knocked down and how he came back and diversification. I mean, that's a huge one for me with you. But this is the perfect podcast for you, and I'm super excited to welcome Arturo. And if you're listening for the first time, I'm going to interview Arturo for a bit, and I'm going to have a little time for Q&A. So if you have something and you'd like to bring that up, you can certainly do that, and love to hear some questions. So here are a few highlights I jotted down, Arturo, about you. And first of all, we're both Michiganders, right?
No, I know.
Yeah.
A lot of
So
greatness coming from the
yeah,
state of Michigan.
that's right. A lot of greatness. So U of M grad, grew up in Lansing. You want to explain that a little bit? Because, do your high school friends still talk to you? Because, when you're a Lansing kid, like the entire Michigan State campus is like shadowing your high school, and
Yeah.
and you chose Michigan.
That's right. I had to, it felt like the right thing to do in order to get a little bit of distance and separation from my
Yes.
parents at the time.
Yes. Okay. I love it. I love it. By the way, for us who are Michiganders, it is not an easy task to get into the University of Michigan when you go to high school
Yeah.
inside the state. They have a selection process that actually works against us as in-state residents.
Yeah.
So they don't favor it. They actually favor an international and an out-of-state student, and they have a unique concept of that in the public school market, which is one to its own, which Michigan has many unique requirements and unique things of their own. But I would just say, Arturo, first of all, hands off, because the only way I was going to Michigan was on a baseball scholarship. It was never going to be through my academics. And my understanding is you earned it. Is that right?
Well, I'd like to think I did. As soon as I went into high school, or as soon as I went into Michigan, I was playing club soccer, but there was no scholarships for that. And at the time, the MLS actually didn't even exist. So professional soccer wasn't even an option at the time. But yeah, it was a pure academic play, and was a tremendous school, and some of the best 4 years of my life there at Michigan.
Yeah, Ann Arbor, Michigan. So biology, Latin American study. Arturo Gomez, Latin American studies probably wasn't way off the radar. Talk a little bit
Yeah.
about why you chose that.
I think that there was a big portion of my history, my legacy in terms of where my parents came from, and what that all meant to me. That kind of drove a portion of that. The other thing is that I wanted to have some options, in the back of my mind. even though I was really more science focused, in the back of my mind, I wanted to have some options, perhaps if I wanted to relocate to Latin America. And so I thought that bringing in some of that background was going to be a good idea. And it actually ended up being, I mean, it was like an English and history major. I mean, it was not really, the assumption was that you had already mastered the language at that point in time. So, I mean, it was, for my senior, some of my senior classes, I mean, we were writing 25, 26 page papers in, what needed to be absolutely fluid and fluent Spanish. So it was tough.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. By the way,
it was tough.
I got to hang out with you for like a week because I'm in Spain next month, and I don't know much of anything, right? I know chicken scratch baseball slang, right? I'm awful.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a challenge. But let's talk a little bit about you are a hospitality guru, but you're a diversification guru too, and you own a hospitality group with Rocket Ranch. I mean, with Billy Deck. I mean, if people haven't heard of that, they've never been to Chicago, because these are massive restaurants that are just the where to go, the where you have to go eat. It's the who, and Sunda's one of my favorites, right? So fabulous place. You've got nightlife development inside that, management, a lot of things on that side. Then you've got a marketing company with Evolve.
Yeah. Evoke. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, Evoke. I apologize.
Yep.
Evoke.
Yeah, no worries.
And then you've got, of course, your luxury transportation group in Big Game Air and Triumph Jets.
Yeah. So it's, somebody asked me the other day, they said, you seem like you're in a couple, really different pots. I said, actually, they're very, very similar, and they're very closely tied. I mean, everything that I do and everything that I've done is around experience. Mm-hmm. It's around this concept or idea that I am insanely passionate, fundamentally, about just putting smiles on people's faces. And so, the things that I do are really revolve. I mean, there's a lot of background to them, and there's a lot of financial business acumen that's really necessary. But, fundamentally, that all those businesses create experience.
Yeah. Yes. I've experienced a number of those businesses, and they're awesome, right? And by the way, they put a smile on my face, so thank you.
Good.
So the standout for I love this belief. Arturo's belief is that a leader is only as strong as his team or her team, evident in the dedication, compassion, and certainly commitment to mentorship for you, Arturo. Why don't you speak to that for a second?
I think from a very young age, I just I felt a real deep altruistic behavioral urge to really help people around me. And again, I think when you really boil down to really my fundamental purpose, I'm here to serve, and it's not really I don't exclude myself in that service, because I think that everybody should have some component of the things that they do that really comes back to you. But I love helping people, and I love seeing people reach their potential. I mean, that's what motivates me on a daily basis.
Okay. Love it. So I ask you, I say, Arturo and I are friends, but I ask you and say, hey, Arturo, come on my show. Winners find a way. Yeah. Why is that important to you? Why do you agree to that?
Well, I agree to it because, one, I love the conversation that you and I have. I think it's enlightening for me, but I also love what you're doing. I love the fact, anybody that's out there that really truly is diving into the depth of what leadership and coaching and mentorship can be, I think is fantastic. I think that's the future. I think that if more people were actually really looking at opportunities to coach, to mentor, to help, that we would be a much better society. And I think that there's going to be people now, and there's people that have been there in the past, and there'll be people in the future that will leave a longer standing legacy by the things that they do through leadership, coaching, and mentoring.
Yeah, you were this fabulous soccer player in high school, and
I
But
wouldn't say fabulous. I worked
what
my
they
tail off and
they didn't call
tried
you
a lot.
Messi. They didn't call you,
Yeah,
like it's a little early for Messi probably, but maybe Pele, maybe I don't know how
yeah,
far back I gotta go for
yeah,
me, but like it's way back. Um, but when I think about our schooling, and you and I grew up an hour apart. I'm a Battle Creek
yeah.
kid, right? And I many a nights I played ball games and two state championships actually in Lansing,
Awesome.
and so when I think about that, where there was no curriculum for leadership at my junior high, at my high school, at my university, at anywhere I attended. I think about where did you find it, and I certainly got some from sport,
Yeah,
but junior achievement had some things, and there was a couple, like if you were to join one of those exclusive clubs that started talking about some of these things, but they were not for the faint at heart. They were
yeah.
hand-picked selection kind of things, and I don't know if I would have qualified,
Mm.
right? And so how about you? I mean, if we're going to change this and change that
Yeah.
sentiment, if this is going to be really our mantra for growth, where is it in our educational process?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think, listen, I think when you and I were growing up, it was the leadership as a concept really wasn't discussed, broad the way that it is discussed today. It was just kind of one of those things that leaders appeared or they were nurtured in some way, shape, or form by somebody who cared and somebody that was there. And a lot of the times it was coaches because that's where a lot kids that were dedicated to sport were spending a ton of time with their coaches, and they were getting some coaching from them. But I think we all get it from different pieces as young men and women. And I certainly now can look at things that I took from both of my parents, that are fundamental pieces of who I am today.
Mm,
And I think that there was certainly things that I learned from coaches in the athletic spectrum. 100%. I was a very challenging kid and I say that because I was I was really very high energy, and I I I would lose concentration and lose sight with people that I needed to be entertained and evolved. And so there were some teachers and some coaches that really understood what made me work and understood how to challenge me and really how to evolve me as a person.
yeah.
And there were some that didn't, and that I never connected with them, and they probably thought this kid is going to go on to do nothing, and
Yeah.
that relationship and that connection just wasn't a memorable one. And so
Mm,
the people that really had big impact on me were the individuals that worked hard to get into my head, to get
mm,
into my mind.
yeah.
And it was those individuals, men and women, that really left a lasting impression on me, and kind of started the base layer of what would become a lifelong passion for leadership.
And what I love about this is a great segue to your show.
Yeah.
Arturo and his friend Rob Cressy, two world beaters in this society, I'll tell you, they lead a podcast called Leadership DNA. And I love that segue to that because we do have a DNA style, and my style's not like your style, and
Yeah.
Rob's style's different, and so's Trisha and Dina and everyone else, and we have different ways we learn and all these things. And how as coaches do we lean in and learn that? I think is a huge valuable lesson that I agree with you, and I think back as soon as you said that, I thought about, man, I don't think about those coaches I didn't connect with very well,
Right.
but I could imagine them going, that kid's not gonna amount to squat. Like he
Right.
can't focus on anything, right? Like whatever
Right.
my issue was at the moment,
Yeah.
right? And he's too driven. Like the intensity's too high, or whatever. He's gonna falter because it just won't work. Because I think what the mantra is, because he's not like me. And
Right.
and how many leaders have made that error so long, going, you know what I need? If we're really going to turn this over to someone right, they probably ought to be just like me. Like, wait, what?
Yeah.
I don't know how many interviews I've had where I've been in an interview and I've got a young person, relatively fresh out of school, going, mm-hmm. sitting across from you, Arturo, going, yeah, Arturo, yeah, yeah, that's what I think too. Yes, 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 man, right over here. And I have had to stop these interviews 20 minutes and go, hey, listen, Brian, is there going to be an original thought? Because if you think just like I do, one of us isn't needed here, and since I own the joint, it's probably you, right? Like, so how do we want to? How do you want this to go? And it's like, man, it hit kids like, whoa, I was coached up to just be like, yeah, agreeable, and that's not what leaders are looking for at
Yeah.
all, right?
Yeah. No, totally. I mean, listen, I think that people that are leaders are individuals, and they stand, um, as a representation of their very specific imprint that they're going to leave on this planet. And so, no two leaders are the same. But I think that there are fundamentals, and there are things that resonate to me across the leadership spectrum that great leaders share in common, right? So, and some of those things are really just very basic, fundamental things. I mean, connecting with people and understanding how to anticipate, emotion, and being very in touch with EQ is something that I think is, you and I know, and I think you specifically know, because you've created a whole enterprise around leadership development, that it can be trained, it can be trained, it can be coached. You can open doors for people. You can create some real understanding and awareness of how leadership can be obtained. I think that the people, though, that have had great ease in leadership, I should refrain from saying it's easy, because it's not easy. I think that there's some people that are really born with just they have like a sixth sense, and they are in tune with people. They can read them, because leadership is about convincing, coaching, mentoring. But the convincing part is sometimes having to give more of yourself in order to be able to get that person to dive into what you're trying to do. And so you have to be very in tune with what people are feeling to be able to do it. So, and I think that a lot of that is born. I think it can 100% be coached, because I've seen it. I've been a benefactor of my hard work, my coaching, and my mentoring in terms of the development of future leaders. But I would say that there's some people that have come out of the box as younger leaders early on, and you see them on the field. You see these kids that will do anything for their team. They understand when somebody else is hurt. They understand when they gotta take it up 10 notches, because they got to carry the team on their back. I mean, these are kids, boys and girls, that I think have a very, very strong understanding of self, and really a great understanding of other emotional needs from other people.
Wow, love that. And I just, it's funny because I just posted this morning on Fun Story Friday. I hiked up Camelback Mountain last week while I was in Arizona. And I used to be a guide, right? I used to lead that hike when I was in the 20s,
wow.
For people coming out of the Camelback Inn from Marriott, famed 5-star, 5-diamond hotel, right? And I was a youngin' and just learning, but I also took that back to when I was a kid. And I really thought about that responsibility I had as a top performer, and how my teammates were looking to me, and my parents made me own that responsibility pretty soon. Like, hey, your team needs you this weekend. Are you getting enough rest? Are you preparing for what's about to happen, doing your workouts? Are you thinking about who you're playing? And my dad was the ultimate coach, right? He was a coach for me a long time. And yeah, I just thought, like, wow, there was a lot more to it. Now, looking back on that, I learned a lot of lessons about others. I think at that young age, it was a lot about me. And I don't know how much I knew the value of the team. I wonder if I could, hold up a mirror if I looked enough into others at that age, for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, there's something about leadership that I've, Rob and I have talked about it on some separate podcasts, but when people think about or talk about the word, vanity, right? You think of it as a real bad connotation, but
yeah,
people that are really strong leaders, I think there's a certain amount of vanity that they have to them, because if you don't care about yourself to the umpteenth degree, you'll never ever make it as a leader, because you have to be so individually strong in order to be able to give enough and literally more of yourself, because there's leaders around that, if they have a full tank in the morning, they're dumping the tank out and they're not really keeping much for themselves. They're just giving it. And so in order to be able to do that, you have to be so confident, strong, and madly in love with who you are to be able to do that. And so I think that in our youth, as we're, I don't think that being selfish to a certain degree, I think to me, it's that realization of what it is that we need as humans and as individuals to actually, what's our fuel, what's going to get us to 100. And then now we can start giving to other people. So, I went through, portions of my life where I've had people say, hey, you're a bit selfish. And I break that down and I try to dissect it. And I think that maybe there was times that I was, but I think that I'm certainly making up for it now. But I think that leaders have to be very centric around a real good understanding about who they are and what they need in order to be successful to give.
That's great. So let's talk quickly about where people find you before we go any farther. Where do they find you? I mean, you got the Leadership DNA podcast. Where else can we find Arturo?
Yeah, LinkedIn is probably going to be the best place. I mean, that's where I'm spending the most of my time right now. I mean, I'm on other social channels as well, but I would say that LinkedIn, from a leadership standpoint or professional standpoint, LinkedIn, Arturo Gomez is going to be the best place.
Awesome. Okay, really good. And you can, you want to highlight all the things you're involved with in Chicago, as far as, I mean, we can obviously book our own jet on Big Game Air for the national championship if you want to go, and he'll hook you up for that. And then of course he will hook you up on Triumph Jets if you just need to go to the Napa for, the weekend. And of course, restaurants abound on Chicago. You want to name that list? You want to run down?
Yeah. So the list is actually is smaller now. So the company Evoke that I mentioned earlier is my new hospitality company. So I divested and moved away from my other places that I spent many years building. So Sunda and Rocket, those are in the past, as is Underground. I'm moving forward. I just opened a restaurant in the midst of the pandemic. It's a concept called Edie's All Day Cafe, which we're right now in the midst of growing more of them. So we're going to be expanding that concept, opening a sushi concept in August. And then I'm working, and then I'm working on a hotel project here in Chicago in the Gold Coast that'll be opening in October.
Love it. Okay, that's awesome. Well, before we jump into, I want to find more about you, but let's tell them, like, Edie's special. Why is Edie so special?
Well, one, it's named after my daughter. But no, I had a wonderful time designing that concept because I was able to use my daughter, who was 4 years old, literally as the muse of the concept. And so I had a blast because she's just such a bright little young colorful personality. And so we had a fun time putting it together, and she was actually there to help me. So
okay, all right, let's dive into this a little bit. On the most, I want to ask you a question about the most impactful pivot point you had as a kid, when you knew, hey, you were destined. I'm destined for U of M. I'm gonna do great things. I am on my way. I am rocket fuel, so I might as well start Rocket Ventures, right? Like, tell me about what was there a moment that changed things for you?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I was I think it was really young age. It was probably 5 years old, Trent, when something happened, and I feel funny even talking about it because it's something that, like, I was riding my bike one day and I almost got thrown off the bike by something like some invisible something, and don't know what it was. And it just hit me. And at that moment in time, I realized, or something said to me, that I was here for a purpose, that I was here to do something. What that is, I still don't necessarily know. I'm plugging away. And I remember sharing that story with my mom, and we actually still talk about it. But I think that it was probably my parents' divorce when I was in high school that made me quickly understand that I was going to be, that it was going to be up to me. That everything that I was going to want in this world and everything that I was going to do in this world was going to be up to me. And it wasn't because my parents were inactive in my life,
Sure.
but I realized very quickly that it's time to grow up, and it's time to grow up fast. This is at 15 years old. And so I think that was the defining moment for me. And it was also at a point in time in high school where I had to really assert myself to make sure that I was, for me, getting great grades and moving beyond Lansing was critical. There wasn't an option. Like I didn't have, there was no turning back.
Yes.
Additionally, it was, soccer was becoming more competitive, more challenging. And I had to make a mental decision on, whether I wanted to be a B player or I wanted to be an A player. And so being an A player required, taking a shovel to the park and shoveling off the tennis courts yourself and playing soccer, in 5-degree below weather,
right.
By yourself and kicking against the fence and practicing till you were blue in the face. And literally, so I think that was probably the first time that I really felt like there was some big turning point that I really had to, for lack of a better expression, man up and get myself ready and prepared. And so, but life, as we know, is I've come to a realization that life was never intended to be easy, at least not for me. And I think, when I actually talk about it, I don't think about it as hey, poor me. I think about it as what would life have been if I had been deprived of all these hard lessons and have been born with a silver spoon in my mouth. And I don't think life would be as impactful and as colorful. And I don't think I'd be the person that I am today. So there's a bunch of turning points and a bunch of pinnacles and valleys that I've gone through. Yeah. And so, but yeah, that's the first one, I would say.
That's a big one. I really appreciate that. Have you gone back to Lansing? Are your parents still there?
Yeah. So my dad is in Milford.
Yep.
My mom is still in Lansing. And, I go back probably like twice a year to visit them. They come here. I'm still very connected with my parents. We have a tremendous relationship. I think a part of my Lansing experience, it was one of those things that when I left, I never came back. So when I went to college, I never came back to Lansing, and Lansing was fantastic. It was, in my opinion, one of the greatest places to ever grow up, because again, it's who I am. But I was always a move forward kind of guy. And as when I left, things became very critical parts of my legacy and of who I am, but nothing to dwell on and nothing to attach to. So
I love that. And the reason I ask you that is because I share this sentiment with you. I can remember at about 14, 15 years old saying, I'm going to leave Battle Creek, Michigan when I turn 18 years old, and I won't be returning. I can even remember telling my mom, and she's like, well, we're still going to be here. And I'm like, Christmas is okay. I was like steadfast. The world was this big thing, and, and it's a big blue ball, and I'm going to see all of it, and quite frankly, I did, right? I set that in my mind, Arturo, and I got, all these teams to pay for it, right? Which is even better, because I really got a chance to visit it. And, but what I found is, like you, I found like what a great childhood I had, especially in talking to friends about the foundation that we had in Michigan, the opportunity, the safety, the things that were just there, and the foundational principles that people matter, family's important, and all those things. And I think it's why I came back, a few years ago. I mean, of course, I came back. I coached for the Tigers, but I wasn't here that long. I mean, but I've always enjoyed Michigan. I've owned a house up north, because having a northern house, a lake house in Michigan is a thing, right?
Totally.
And it is the Great Lakes state, so it is important. And I've owned one for 10 years now in Michigan, so I have been back. and I have some investments in Michigan, so I still appreciate that. But let's talk about, I love the quote from Chris McChesney and Sean Covey. Sean Covey, of course, is the CEO of the Covey Associates now, who took over for his father, QB at BYU. He wrote a book called The Four Disciplines of Execution. Winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way to win.
Yeah.
And
it's true, 100%.
Yeah. So, right. And so let's talk a little bit about your background. What do you think allowed you to become one of those 1%ers, Arturo, and I'd like you to talk a little bit about one of these times you were up against it, losing, found a way to come back down, but not out.
Yeah. Well, there's so many instances of that. And I think, I don't know what other people's journey through life is, but, I have a hard time believing that everybody wins all the time.
Right.
And that there's challenges that we encounter nonstop on a daily basis. But I think that when people, again, to me, it boils down to this insane love and courage and understanding that we have of ourselves, and that really pushes and motivates. Anytime that I've ever felt that I was moving in the wrong direction, I figure out, whether it's through a strategy, a plan, a written plan, a commitment to a schedule, whatever the case is, I don't like losing. And I'm not, it's not that I don't like losing when I feel like I'm absolutely in control of the outcome. And I've very, very rarely ever encountered anything in life that I thought was out of my hands, ever. And that may be very poor miscalculation or misjudgment, but, I've been asked throughout my life, whether I gamble. And I tell people, I said, the only thing I ever bet on is myself. It's the only thing I ever bet on. And they say, well, that's interesting. I said, well, because I think it's a sure bet. And I say, and so, I think that quote and that concept, it's accurate. It's accurate to me. There may be people that may not see the accuracy in it. I think again, people that find a way to win are people that have an extreme understanding of what their body, mind, and emotional needs are, and they're able to push on it like a machine.
Let's talk about that for a second, because to be a 1%er, you have superpowers that most people don't have. I mean, I'd love to tell you, like, hey, everyone's got this skill, but and you know what, the skill may be there, but they haven't brought it to a level that is required of this. And I can think of a couple. You're very foundational in your show about probably 5 or 6 things that. But what is the superpower that separated you from the rest?
I think it's the desire to see how great I could be. And again, not in an egotistical way. Like, I think that there's still so much on the table there's opportunity there. But I also think that there's this insatiable appetite, ambition that just, honestly, it is a burning fire that just burns. I mean, I try to, do the best that I can to take care of my body, but, I sleep, 6 hours a night, and I feel pretty damn good about it. Like, I don't know that that's necessarily the healthiest route, but that's what my body needs. And so, the people that are just gunning nonstop have this stamina that is crazy. And I've been around other people like it. I've noticed that there's been times where, the seams are coming loose and the ship's taking on water, and people around me needed to gravitate towards this concept that I was looking around going, get a bucket. Everybody get a bucket. Let's go. What are we worried about? We're moving forward. And so I think it's those attitudes. It's not even, it's a real belief. It is a belief system that allows you to keep going. And it's unique to leaders, but the leaders, this is conversation that you fill a room with a bunch of guys that are profound leaders. They're going to probably say very similar things, that they have this stamina and this fire that's burning inside of them that just doesn't want to go out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I see that, and I think this is so important to people. Like that is that plays regardless of sex, age, creed, race, whatever.
Yeah.
Like you can't snuff it out. Like it's burning, and they're like, "Oh, get some water," and you're like, "That's gonna do nothing for me. Go ahead, throw it on.
Yeah.
I'm gonna burn, baby." And
Yeah.
and you see it with people,
Yeah.
and that's awesome. I mean, I think that's a great picture of that superpower, because we always you can't keep a good person down, right? What is the one value, belief, or action that was kind of a go-to, or that you would
Yeah.
recommend when things turn down for you? I mean, we've
Mhm.
seen it. I mean, I'm sure people, they've known you've come through some fires, right?
Sure.
And probably because hey, listen, when you already got ambition fire going, you're like, hey, I'll just join the party, right?
Yeah.
Like, what are you gonna do?
Totally.
Burn me with flames? I'm already on
Yeah.
fire. So, but what was that one thing that for you, like you said, go get a bucket? What's that one belief that you think was so critical, or that you would recommend?
Yeah. I mean, again, I think this is more the conversations that I'm having in my head. And one thing that I've always had, I grew up going to Catholic schools, and so there's quite a bit that uh, left an impression on me. Some good, some bad, but
Right?
um, so there was a saying that I learned very, very early, very young, and it was "Seek and you shall find."
Mm,
And I, for my entire life, that has been very applicable in so many different ways, because it could be applied to a solution, it could be applied to really to anything. And so I've always been a very solution based individual. Like there is no option but to find the option, and another thing that just resonates inside is that failure is not an option, right? And so
mhm.
if you really truly believe in those things, then you find yourself pushing down the field to really, this may not look pretty, but it's not gonna look bad. So I just and I've been confronted with different situations, which was career pivotal points, or challenges that I had with in a mentorship programs that I've run. and
Mhm.
and you have to understand at what level you have to commit, and most often it's at the highest level.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk a little bit about before we go to the Q&A. First
Yeah.
of all, like, this has been awesome. Like, thanks so much. I mean,
Thank you.
I know our listeners, like, they see the value in every one of our episodes, because I have
Yeah.
some just great folks on the show. And every time, I mean, I'll tell you what excites me, Arturo, is like, I can go back during my workouts and listen to our talk, and I
Yeah.
get nuggets again, like, ooh, I didn't even think about that in that way, because I'm thinking about
Yeah.
the next question. And when I just got time to kind of come back and reflect, I get bunches of stuff
Yeah.
out of it. So it's awesome.
Good.
Um, so enjoyed learning about our different, that ambition, that drive, that seek and you will find, and just keep finding that. When you say seek and you will find, I always think about that old exercise we did where water finds a way. We talk about the leaks in the house,
Yeah.
right? Like there's always that.
Yeah.
Oh, guess what? It'll move to a path of least
Yeah.
resistance, and it'll get its way
Totally.
through. And so I love learning that, and about you and what you're up to and what's next. And that's pretty awesome. It's time for the best way to win before we go to the Q&A.
Yeah.
Is there something that you want to share with listeners that we did not touch on today that you think like, hey man, I am up against it, and I want to be elite, and how do I win?
Yeah.
What would you recommend for them?
Yeah. I recommend, if a couple things. So don't be shy to ask for help. Do not refrain from from calling somebody that you think can assist. Don't refrain from, reading the book that you think that you should read. Like go find the answer. So, seek. If you need to find a solution, you need to go seek it. The other thing is that if you have the discipline, which in order to really get through some of these challenges, whether it's a career challenge or whether it's a life challenge, they're all the same. They're all challenges. They're different in how they're coming at you or whatever, but you have to have the strength to get through them. You have to have discipline. Map things out, write things down, strategize, put yourself through some rigorous training, refrain from drinking, exercise more, get a good night's sleep, do the things that your body needs, because in times of need, when the tough gets going, the one thing that you're going to need to count on is going to be your physical strength, your stamina, your mental stamina. And so you have to clear all the other shit out of the way. Excuse my language, but you're going to have to clear the mess out of the way. Eat right, sleep right, treat your brain right. And you'll find that there's an emotional balance that comes with those things that really will bring some clarity and some strength. So find some help, ask some questions, go to the closest person that you think may have the answer. If not, find it, get online, do whatever you have to do, but also just map it out, write things down, write work. When you write things down, you can oftentimes find the key, find the door, find the loophole, find how you're going to get through that wall.
So good. That's so good. And one of the things I also heard you just say in that is eliminate things that aren't helping, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, if you're being inefficient because it's taking you a while to get in the morning because you had 4 or 5 too many drinks and all, like eliminate that from your game. Like, why would you restrict your game in any way, your productivity in any way by doing things that aren't feeding your success, right?
Right.
I love that. Okay, let's go to a few questions here. My first one is, what values are you practicing and even developing that made you change the way you see things, or your perspective in life? What are some of those key values, those value lessons that you've held on to, and they're standards for you? They're like lines in the sand, like, don't cross them, or it's go time, right?
Yeah. I believe in just fundamentally being a good person. I mean, it's again, referencing my time in private Catholic schools. I think there's now I would say I'm more of a philosophically more of a Eastern kind of philosophy kind of guy, but I think being a good human is the fundamentals. That's it. My values are centered around making sure that the people around me are okay. Like it's always I love being in pressure situations because I love helping and I love making people around me better. And I do that because, I generally have a real true love for humanity. I mean, I think it's why for me, it's why I'm here, So, but yeah, I think what it boils down to it is, honesty, integrity, and really believing in just the fundamental things that can make people great humans.
Okay, love it. You gotta use one of those big itty words, right? That unfortunately people throw it around like it's nothing, but integrity is no joke, right? You can't throw that as a punchline, right? And we're back to a few good men, right? Like, but integrity is one of those words, like everyone knows when it's said. It's like, the conversation has just gone from here to here, and now we're going to talk about something serious, right?
And so it's humility. I mean, we talked about that, in our last, but because humility to me is where the wall, as a leader, the walls start coming down. Obviously, integrity, you have to have integrity, but humility to me is insanely, it has much more power because humility allows you to get into other people's heads, and you're getting into other people's heads not for any other reason other than to help them. And people, when they don't see somebody as an individual that is very humble, then you're automatically on defense. Like, what does this person want? Or, screw that person or whatever. Like when you have somebody that is insanely humble and there's a lot of humility, that person they can knock down walls quickly because they put people at ease. To me, humility is one of the more powerful traits and characteristics of leadership.
Love it. All right. You've had a lot of success and won a lot. What's the best battle that you've conquered in your lifetime?
Ooh, well, I don't know that story is fully written yet, but I'll give you
All
some.
right.
I think there's wars that are going to still be fought.
Yeah.
Um, I would say, God, that's a great question. I think probably for me the early, kind of the early experience that I mentioned with my parents' divorce. I think it
Mm,
was, there's been so many things that have occurred on the personal side and in the professional side that I think are just insane stories of battling it out and courage and stamina and all the above. But I think that story back when I was 15, it could have gone a couple different ways. And I had some really great friends that I was surrounded by, and I also had some other friends that certainly could have taken me down another path. And I chose the path that I thought was that I knew where I was that I wanted to go, and that was to do something with my life. And so,
hmm
but that was a challenging moment because you all of a sudden you feel like you're on this island, and it's really the first time you're a man, or you're feeling like you're a grown up, but you're technically really not. I was 15, and so it was. I think that was probably one of the more challenging times for me to make sure that I made the right decision.
It's great. Let's talk about, I hear all the time,
Yeah.
don't buy a restaurant. That business is awful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I
Yeah.
hear that all the time. Yet in every town you ever go to, there's
Yeah.
hundreds and thousands of them, right? So someone
Yeah.
decided to do this somewhere along the way.
Right.
And you and I both know who've done very well in that industry. So why do people say it? Why do they deem that such a challenge?
Because by the way, I mean, it's extraordinarily hands-on. It requires a tremendous amount of stamina. It requires the individual, that the entrepreneur behind the restaurant, to have a real depth of marketing, a real depth of HR, and more so people management.
Hmm
Leadership, financial business acumen, because it becomes a numbers game.
hmm
There's a lot of moving parts, and also you're also a manufacturer, right? You're
Yes.
producing product at large scale, and can you produce product with integrity? Can you do it selecting the highest level of ingredients and making sure that you're charging fair prices for your great product? And so there is a ton of moving parts.
Mm.
It's also the competitive landscape. I think that's probably what makes it the most difficult, is because there is no real barrier to entry to restaurants. Like, anybody with a couple bucks in their pocket can go get a loan, and they can open up a restaurant. And there's differences in terms of how people are capitalized, and what if is it a $5 million restaurant or a $25,000 place or whatever. But I think that's the key, and it's really a daily thing. And I mean, managing the human capital is tough. It's
Oh, yeah.
really a challenge.
Yeah.
And so if you're not a real believer in management, and if you're not a real believer in creating a culture that allows for people to flourish, that's why these places go out of business very quickly. It's very, very few successful restaurants, would I say, have a very caustic or bad culture. I would say almost none of them, right? And but yeah, I mean, I've also seen other businesses and advised in other areas, and even in the aviation side that we're in, there is nothing's easy.
Yeah.
Nothing is easy. But yeah, restaurants, I think, historically have a bad track record. But again, it's probably more towards the idea that there is no barrier to entry, and like every Joe, Jim, Susie, Sally can go open a place if they want.
Yeah.
You know. So
All right, that's good. I mean, that's good insight. And when you think about that, the entrepreneur world, like you do wear, I mean, how many hats, right? It's just, and I think
yeah,
about how you had. I always think of what a value because people come into Chicago and a lot of people come for the food, right? And then they go,
totally.
well,
Yeah.
we're going to Sunda, right? Like
Yeah.
or
Right.
Gibson's or whatever, and
Yeah.
and so yeah, I get that, but it's also there's also 10,000 choices. Like this
Yeah.
isn't
Right.
the only place in town that's your
Yeah.
option, and so it's a blessing and a curse.
Right.
Let's talk about the balancing act that you've done of diversification, multiple teams, multiple industries. How do you balance that?
God, it's well, one, I do believe that the things that I'm involved with do revolve around a very common theme,
Hmm.
and it's that experience concept, right?
Yes.
I don't I don't I don't have a passion to open an accounting firm tomorrow, even though I'm a
Right.
numbers guy and I like
Yeah. Right.
numbers. I don't. There's nothing passionate for me in that area. Um, you have to be a student. You have to be a student of the game, and if you're not literally trying to learn something about yourself or about your business on a daily basis, you're never going to survive. And so, in order for me to be able to jump into these other spaces, I had to be really confident and understanding of my capability. Um, and so I knew that in order to go into aviation, I mean, I didn't know anything about aviation. I knew that I knew how to research and I knew how to connect dots very quickly.
Hmm.
Um, I also knew enough about, creating corporate structure, um, creating branding and marketing and PR and all the things that I think are actually fundamental to entrepreneurs. And so I had some real confidence going into these different industries. And again, part of it is the part close tied to the quote that I said that I don't. The only thing that I bet on is myself because
Mm.
I knew going into those projects that I wasn't gonna be outworked and that I was gonna find answers and that I was gonna seek things out and that I was gonna try to find the best people and that I was also gonna approach these new relationships in this industry with humility and that I was gonna be the first person to shake people's hands, remember people's names, follow up emails, and do all the above. And that all those things count. Every one of those things count. People want to do business with good people, and so I'm a big believer in that, and I was at the time, and so, but it is a tremendous amount of work, and sometimes you have to pivot very quickly in terms of where your eyes are focused. I've gotten used to it. I have some great partners, and I have great teammates that nothing would exist without that. And so, and that's another thing. I mean, we have done a great job in our different businesses ensuring that we have succession and that we have some redundancy and that we have individuals that can step to the plate in any time. And it may not be exactly the same, but it's going to be pretty damn close.
Mm. One of those big itty words,
Yeah,
sustainability,
yeah,
right?
totally.
Like
Yeah,
how do I package that up? And I think like what I like your approach is you're coming in at the end in mind. Like we have to think about
yeah,
how do we pivot the sustainability, setting up that structure properly, getting it in order, thinking about not only the intended consequences, which we're so good at, but
yeah,
what are the unintended consequences that may happen along the way,
sure.
and preparing for those things because that creates a sustainability. Because as we look at this, man, things happen, right? Like
Right.
nothing proved that like 2020, right? Like stuff is
Well,
going to change, and so I love that those investments in all those 7, 8, 9 swim lanes. You just keep investing in the people, in the process, in the structure, in all these things, and teammates, right? And so
right.
good. What did when you talk about because your organization sounds dedicated, determined to help your people achieve success. What various organizations did to achieve to make sure that Arturo achieved success? University of Michigan did some things to help
Yeah,
you achieve success. What else did some other things
yeah.
do?
I think I've been asked that question quite a bit, Trent, and there are probably 4 or 5 people through my life that I think fall into that criteria. I'd also say though that I think that there was probably a real lack of individuals throughout my life that were willing to step to the plate. And so everybody's journey is going to be a little bit different. And that's why sometimes you have to put it all on your shoulders, and you have to know that nobody is going to give you anything for free, zero. And that's the reality. And I love giving back, because I realized that, at least in my experience, there was a vacuum of people that were willing to help. It was always, I came down with this realization, is that just depend on people not coming through. And it's a bad way to look at things, but it saved my life. Saved my life, knowing that I needed to triple check, double check, don't count on it, because there's no guarantees except for the time and the energy that you're going to put into something. And so, that also, like I said, that's why I do the things that I do, because I remember points in time in my life where I definitely needed somebody there, a mentor, a coach, outside of my father and my mother and the people that 4 or 5 individuals that really stand out.
For sure.
They couldn't be there all the time,
Yeah. All right, Arturo Gomez. You can find him on LinkedIn. Yeah. You can find him at Big Game Air. You can find him at Triumph Jets. You can find him at Evoke. You can find him at Leadership DNA Podcast. So, Arturo, I am so thrilled and thankful and blessed that you would be with us. Thank you.
Of course. Such a pleasure, man.
It is a pleasure, man. Anytime I spend time with you, it's awesome. For all of you, please follow the show on YouTube Live. Always rate us 5 stars. Subscribe to the channel. We are on Leadershipity, Trent M. Clark, on all the social media markets: Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We are mostly on LinkedIn as well. You can find us there, leadershipity.com. Look for our upcoming ebook, The Pyramid of Leadershipity, which we're all excited about. And today's episode, I hope you enjoyed it. Rate that 5 stars, of course. And then I'm going to finish with your verse, your quote, your go-to. Hey, man, when I've been kicked, when I've been knocked down, what are you going to go to that serves you? And I will give you a little time and not put you on the spot with this as you think through this, because as I thought about my time with you, Arturo, it really came back to me there's a lot of things that came back to me, but I really thought about a Bible verse. I was reading through the other day, thinking about our time together that we've had in the past and looking forward to our time together. And I thought of Ecclesiastes 11:2. Give portions to 7. Yes, to 8. For you do not know what disaster may come upon the land. Like, there will be trials, but you have diversified into concepts, into people, and structured that if one swim lane, all of a sudden the water drains out of that pool. Listen, we're not going to drown. We're not going to fall to the bottom, because there's 7 swim lanes that are full of water. It's going to hold us up. We're not going to capsize here, right? Because you've always been diligent about really involved in so many portions and giving portions of yourself, your time, your energy, your capital, your philanthropy, everything there. So I just thought of that about you.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of something that I really do believe that this concept, or this quote of seeking you shall find, has been a real guiding light. And to me, I find it applicable in so many different areas. But at the end of the day, people just need to believe in themselves, and that is the core of what I think has driven me and has gotten me certainly where I am today, and certainly where I will be in the future. And for anybody that is listening today and that really believes in leadership and really is looking at it as a calling, our legacy in our life will be left by the people that we've evolved and that we've created in terms of leadership. It's not about our personal accomplishments. It's not about the amount of money in our bank accounts. It's about none of that. I think when it's all said and done, when people talk about Trent and they talk about Arturo, they're going to talk about, at least in my eyes, what I want is I want them to talk about how much I gave and the people that I impacted and created totally separate individual lives and success stories for them because of the time that I gave them. And so that's, to me, is the currency that I need to take me into wherever I'm going to go.
Love it. All right. Thank you so much. We're ending there.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening. We see you on the next episode on Winners Find a Way with our guest, Nicole Donnelly. I don't know if you know Nicole Donnelly, but she is a serial entrepreneur. Some of you may recognize her from the X Games, as she had one of the most memorable spills of all time. And you want to talk about coming back. This was one of those ones like you don't want your parents to see on TV, this wreck, right? And because you know that as a parent, that absolute anxiety, fear of everything you've trained for, and all of a sudden this moment. So, but Nicole is an absolute treat and a gem, and she's going to be awesome. So she's here next Friday. Hope you'll join us. Arturo Gomez, as always, you are something special, my man, and I am so thankful and blessed that you could be with us. Until next time, we'll see you then.
All right. Take care, buddy.